Ora, muito bem, vamos seguir aqui com o programa deste...
Let's follow with this Saturday's program. This morning we heard Javier Tebas, president of La Liga, talking about the impact that the centralization of rights had, of media rights had for the Spanish football to improve the competitiveness in the league and to increase the production beyond borders. La Liga has been doing great work in this matter. It's a hot topic in the Portuguese football, and to talk about that and the potential that we have in the centralization of media rights in Portugal, the opportunities and challenges that we still have, we will have a panel of experts on this subject matter. It will be interesting, I think, for all to hear how is this discussion and how and when this issue might be closed, which is something that is very important for Pedro Proença, the president of Liga Portugal. So I would like to call to the stage Hugo Nunes, FC Porto, from Hugo Nunes from FC Porto, Claudio Couto from Braga, Sara Louroz from EY, and Santa Parente, which will be our moderator. And I would ask Pedro Proença to bring a small gift for the representatives of the Porto and Braga. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. I would like to start by thanking my guests in the panel for being here and the contribution that they will give to this discussion on centralization of media rights. Through these days, we have been hearing about this topic. This morning, we had Javier Tebas, who mentioned not only the experience of La Liga, but also some of the challenges that might arise in this process in our Portuguese reality. For as a Kickstarter, it would be important to realize the milestones that lead us to the process of final implementation of the centralization of media rights. And I would like to start by mentioning that this process started officially with the publication in March 2021 of the diploma that came in practice to promote the general rule, the centralization. And in November 2021, that same year, Liga Portugal created the centralization team that is in charge of studying the model of commercialization, that model that needs to be delivered with the competition authority. That will be the basis for the process of centralization that will be started from July 2028. We have different datas here. This process is a process with opportunities for the industry of football. We mentioned that many times already, and I would like to bring to the table topics that are more connected with the challenges that Liga Portugal and their clubs will face within this process. And I would like to start with Sara and mentioning the timings of the process of centralization in the Portuguese league. And we know that since the diploma was released and the implementation of the centralization of the market, 7 years have passed. So how can we build a model that can meet the expectations of the market in 2028? We need to do some prediction of the future. Are there any strategic desires that we might consider in the preparation of this model? Thank you, Sandra. I would like to greet the members of the panel, Liga Portugal, and congratulate them for this great event. And let me do a small disclaimer from our previous talk. I'm going to use the term we in the industry. Please don't tell my bosses that I said that. but it is something that I'm used to say that. So, um, regarding your question and what can be the trade model and the process up to 2028, there is a part of the process that is a procedure and the centralization, and the Liga Portugal have its plan. They have the chronograms taught and defined. The proof of that is that one of the issues of this plan, one of the goals is to ensure the transmission of the broadcast of the media rights. And so we have hired 10 measures or macro activities that start in the process, in the definition of the chronograms, the involvement of the stakeholders, defining the assets as well, the conditions, all those issues that are taught and that were planned in the strategic plan of the league. More than that, and I was part of the team to develop this strategic support plan. And I know that when we talk about an association of the league, and the strategic plan and initiatives are based on the commitment of the industry with that strategy. So, what I think can be, and it is absolutely relevant, is to think that in 2028 we will have an asset to sell regardless of the prediction exercises that we might do up to 2028. That asset will be based on our network of fans, a network of fans of the football industry. And the biggest the network is, the biggest is the engagement with our product, the more value we will get from this transaction, which will have a good margin for a potential buyer and the risk price. So the best we work the product, the better, the more we reach our fans, the more proofs we give that our product is valuable, the more you will get that risk price and the more return we will get for the industry, or the buyer will be reward less for that risk. So the big recommendation here is exactly to make this process to have the Liga Portugal ahead as a locomotive, as President says many times, but all the industry should work and be aware that the success depends on everyone. Hugo Nunes, I would like to talk about a topic that you like very much, that's to do with the delimitation of the object of what we want to trade. And I wanted to know your opinion. If we define a group of contents that is wider, do you think that it will allow greater flexibility when we reach June 2028 to meet what the market needs? Well, I would like to start by congratulating everyone for this great event, and thank you for the invitation to be here. I think this is an important issue, and I would like to spread this general message. You need a commitment of all the stakeholders so that this is a successful process. Needs to be successful from a standpoint that was already mentioned of all the steps in this procedure, from the creation of the centralization of media rights, the model of trade, the passage of that discussion in the authority for competition, conversations that we have to have with other authorities that regulate the clubs. Within that process, without a doubt, there should be an effort, solidarity, and I'm talking about sports companies that need to distinguish the everything in a fundamental process that leads us to an issue that anticipates the process of sale itself. The decree that we have nowadays talks about an obligation that changes hands, or a right that changes hand, according a set of responsibilities that are transferred for an entity that we think it would be more appropriate to have a commercial society within the legal framework in Portugal, whose objective is to sell their rights. They don't change the group of circumstances associated to the possession and materiality within the sports companies. The mission is to sell as a whole. And the basis of your question had to do with this. And the idea is, how do you sell the group of the media rights, the broadcasting rights? We know that the market is not just this. When 2 decades ago we sold individually these rights, with the rights you had the first line advertisement. For example, in other realities, in other countries, the trading process was different. You had advantages in adding other assets. You had publicity in the jerseys, not only in the face, in the front, but in other places of the equipment. But these realities were always different in different situations. But this meeting, this reality, needs to happen elsewhere, because hardly it will be interesting for the market to sell as a whole the set of media rights. We need to think that we live in a world where we have assets that have cuts of the recordings of those games. For example, we have tokens and other circumstances, which is easy to realize that there is a relationship of the image with what is subtracted from the television broadcast. That moment of alignment, of awareness that if either we work together to ensure a successful outcome, starts in a discussion that will allow us to go beyond the letter of the decree, of the law. So this shouldn't create any kind of fear to anyone. We are here to with an idea to spread the message that there is this thing of the what is the work, the daily work and the daily of the games, but it's a work, and maybe I close this way, it's a work that is in line with the restructure made in Liga Portugal in order to have a direct involvement in searching for solutions for the sporting companies and their technical staff, without disrespecting anybody in football. If there is the know-how, we need to bring that know-how to the strategy in order to find better solutions. And it's not very hard to do some of these comparisons and see that the formula works best when that is the case. Thank you. Claudio, now up to you. When in July 2028 we reach the market with the product where we have the centralized trade, we will find in the individual market other lines. Will they be more competitive or no? What can we bring as an asset to be able to compete with those leagues in the audiovisual market? We have been talking a lot, and we always mention, and it's one of the mottos of Liga Portugal, the creation of talent. Is it enough to create talent? Thank you for the invitation to be here. It's an honor. Meeting your question, we need to increase talent and competitiveness in our league. If we want to grow, we need to be more competitive, and there cannot be now disparity of 15 times the value between the club that gets more and the one that gets less in terms of the income of the television rights, of the media rights. I think that the word of order is competitiveness. And both Sara and Hugo mentioned that it is very important for the clubs to be aligned within this direction, so that outside the pitch, as Antonio Salvador mentioned yesterday, my president mentioned, that the clubs should all be aligned outside the pitch around this topic. The competition, the rivalry is for the pitch. Outside the pitch, we need to be all together. And the league had an important role when they took a stand and ensured publicly that all the clubs would get at least the values that they have now within the context of the media rights. That being said, it is important, and for me, the key word is competitiveness. We need to create conditions so that all clubs can, in a way, manage their budgets in a more loose way. Allow me to use the expression that a championship is not competitive when you are playing, and it's a hard expression, but it must be said. It's not competitive when we are playing sick clubs. If the clubs are sick, it's no good. So the centralization here will have a pivotal role because it will get more for everyone. Then fixing talent or keeping talent is also very important because only with talent you can have a more competitive league. And here, trying to call the attention for my training and for my field of work, I would call on the role of the government in this process. It is important that clubs have this difficulty every day. It is important for the government to look at the specificity of sports. And in Portugal, this sometimes doesn't happen. There is an inequality, especially in terms of the income tax, when compared to other leagues. Sometimes the same net salary paid in Portugal is much lower than in the other leagues. This makes players, athletes, coaches, and other agents to search for other leagues that are more advantageous from the financial point of view. We have the VAT of the tickets as well, that is in a transition phase that went from 6 to 23% and then went from temporary to definitive. So it's an important issue as well. And I think that above all, it's important to create a balance between all the clubs. The government needs to look at us, the clubs, and the specificity of the sector. And the key word, once again, competitiveness, because we see nowadays 3-4 clubs that in the European competitions they have here or there an acceptable performance. I would say acceptable. But from the fifth onwards, and regarding the Conference League, we don't have the participation of any Portuguese club. So it is important, and this has an impact in the ranking, and it affects all clubs. Next year we'll only have one club directly going to the Champions League. This causes an impact on the sporting factor, and the mindset of the clubs is already guided for this topic. So clubs are in a way aware of the importance of creating competitiveness amongst all so that everyone can perform in a healthy way. Taking Claudio's words, who mentioned the sports competitiveness, which is important, but can we have other aspects that make our media rights more desirable, not only in the international market, but also in the valuation in the national market? That is a recurring-ish question. We can start with the most basic issues. The television product is more interesting if it has many people in the stadiums. It's more interesting if the technical quality is better and you can see it better on the television. So there is a group of investments that have to do with the structures and have to do with this perspective that Claudio mentioned. There's a brutal richness that is turned to these costs that bring unlawful competition in the Portuguese market when compared with others. This market should be protected, because it's a miracle in the Portuguese football. It is a case of a miracle, and it should makes us think how, in terms of structure, how do we want the competition to be held. This has to do with media rights. We cannot have a group of clubs in the professional competitions that they don't own their own structures. We cannot have clubs in the professional competitions, and then is a major business of including a safety network, because it's a brutal cost in lower budgets that has a brutal impact. And this is a discussion that we need to have in terms of media rights, because there is an impoverishment of the badly broadcasted match, a match without the technical conditions to be appealing on television or other media to follow. And there is an aspect that we can associate to the economic control that our neighbors in Spain have, which is, in a way, we need to do this investment so that we can improve the content, and we to be more. We need to penalize the clubs who don't do this investment, so to value the rights and then to make it compensate. It seems that we are trying to punish someone, but this needs to be seen, and I've been talking with the president of Liga. This needs to be a promotion of the effort. It's not a prosecution thing. It's more of a rewarding the effort issue. And I think that we all agree that it's important, the centralisation, and we, together with other assets that might help to boost the product. One of the most important circumstances. Of course, I need to say that there are phenomena of impoverishment with media rights, and they are associated to practices. And Claudio quoted his president yesterday. I can reference mine as well. That in fact, I don't think that the market, especially the external market, is that sensitive towards pyromania phenomenons, but the internal one is. The internal market is being conditioned by a group of disinformation shows or infotainment. I don't know which is the best concept, but that's living in the idea of people's head that the football is a mess. So there is a small case, and allow me for this criticism, it's a strange case that many of those shows occur in entities that have interests in football matches. So the same solidarity that I mentioned before that the football companies should have in this process, I think that there should be a notion of what kind of product do we want to broadcast when we are at that position of trying to get the audience, of managing the audience. This is a thought that this is a reflection that we should all have. We understand that the different businesses that led us to the creation of these products, but we need to reflect on that. Sarah, taking the words and from Hugo, and talking about the quality of the product, the audiovisual product, we know that there is a discrepancy between the audiovisual product regarding the television broadcast when compared to if we watch in one stadium or the other. So this discrepancy, will they have an impact in terms of valuing the product, right? That's my first question. The second one is, if we have this background of the implementation in other leagues on this matter and the practices and the examples that they might bring us, would it be a good idea to use that experience, or should we follow our own path? Thank you, Sandra. And yeah, Hugo already mentioned some of these issues. The objective of the centralization is also to correct these asymmetries and, in a way, being able to show a strategy to so that in a global centralized way we can sell these assets and create a storytelling on the potentiality of the Portuguese football. And that's the work we need to do so that the rights are the penalized possible, as less as possible. And this is one of the goals regarding what we need to learn with other leagues, which obviously we have a lot. These leagues are doing a work that we are now starting to do. We are the last of getting into the market, and we are going to learn with our mistakes and with the success of others. And I wouldn't focus just on what we need to learn with other leagues, but on what we need to learn with other sports, what we need to learn with entertainment. In 2028, what will be asked from the audiovisual product of Liga Portugal and the Portuguese competitions is something that will be much closer of entertainment than just a 90 minutes match. So what assets will we have in the package? This will be decisive for those who will do it. It will help us to build an asset that will meet the consumers, the fans' expectations. So the work has to do with that and to learn much more about what is this league. Claudio, taking into account the reality you know from the different stadiums of the country, which would be the priority points that should have a decisive impact in the television broadcast that, in your opinion, would be the ones needing a more urgent investment? We mentioned some, but let me hear your opinion. Yes, we mentioned some, but as Sarah said, we need to add value to the product. So anything that adds value to the product will make it easier to sell it. Because the consumers nowadays, they search for an experience, not a football match. We see, especially the younger people, nowadays they don't want just to watch the match, they want to have it in their hand, in their phones, in their tablets, anywhere. They want to be in the stadium, but they want to interact with the game, with the match. And I think this is the path to go. We need to prepare the infrastructures, the stadiums, in order to go towards this path. Nowadays, I would say that we have 10, 12 cameras. I'm not an expert, but maybe around that. I would say that in 2028, probably we might have 200 cameras where we have an augmented reality where the consumer might consume what they want, accessing contents that are currently unavailable. I think that the product must meet the experience of what are in fact the ideas of the consumer, and of course to create conditions so that the sports show is much better. How can you do that? With better stadiums, the lighting of those stadiums, the environment. There is a group of nuances that then will look good on television. So the product, and I normally say this is kind of a circular issue. We try, everything is connected, and this is the way I think. And the clubs will need to understand that there is some investment to be done in the beginning. Yes, the companies, the company clubs will need to understand that they will need to take on that role, but it's up to the decision makers to do, and they need to meet that role. Yes, it's a difficult topic. It is the big topic. As I said before, we cannot demand from a society, from a club, and let me use this expression again. But we cannot ask a hill club to ask. We cannot ask them to create infrastructure, top infrastructures overnight, as it happens in Spain, because in fact the club lives to meet everyday's issues. So, but we need a mentality for the future, a wider one, to understand that the growth of small clubs, at the end of the day, it contributes to the growth of to whole clubs in Portugal in general. Thank you very much, Claudio. I know that we are out of time. We were asked to shorten 10 minutes so that we can have time to lunch, but I think that we will go over that time. And I would like to ask you only the fact that after talking about the improvement of the media product, and this is a topic that might have an impact. But I would say that it would for sure take an impact. It has to do with piracy. Sarah, it's estimated that 60% of the access of football contents is done illegally. What are we talking about here? Does this have to do with the fact that, for example, consumers realize that what they pay for a subscription is too high, or is it a cultural issue? Answering directly, I think it's a little bit of both. But the fact of losing value, well, that was quantified, and by a study of EY in 2021, we are talking about a Portuguese market of over 100 million in revenues and 50 million in taxes. So there is a very big loss in piracy. We need to raise more awareness to the consumers. But I'm here defending the consumers and say that there is the need to have a better understanding on why this phenomenon exists. And if the consumer doesn't understand why he needs to pay to access, we as an industry, we need to understand what we can do to meet this consumer and not outcasting the consumer. Once again, the word of order is to add value to the contents that we deliver, to understand why the consumer doesn't see a difference between watching the content in his TV with quality and watching in a computer hidden without quality, with network problems. Why are they available to pay for this pricing? And what can we add to this offer? The exclusive contents, interactive ways of meeting this consumer in order to be able to reach this. On the other hand, we need to understand those who don't have the capability to pay, if we can find pricing models, subscription per match, for example, other models that can make the football closer to our consumer. Legislation was changed, I think, a couple of years ago. New rules were introduced. So legislating on this topic won't be enough. So what other measures can we bring to fight this phenomenon? Sandra, as in everything, we have good examples of the disciplinary sports process where we find ideas, where we want to find a penalty, establish a penalty, make the penalty more serious, and then the practices continue. The same way I criticize a lot those processes, and I think that football should take care of the sanction model, because some of them are not enforced, some are made more serious, but they still happen. But also the state and the players who are concerned with the phenomenon of piracy, which is not only in terms of the television broadcast, but they should be worried with this, and they should search for tools to solve the issue. I don't think that it is a cultural problem. I don't think that the Portuguese people are in trend pirates. Portuguese people is not normally made of criminals. We're not saying that we live in a country that is different from what you can see. I think that there are two important phenomena. One is that people are not aware of the rules and the law, because if you go to social media, you see that insults, threats, they seem to be out of the law if they are done there. I think this is a generational issue that needs reflection at the social level before anything else, and we need awareness on this matter, which I think it's important for those who have responsibilities. We need more than law to have a general prevention. While saying this, going over this line is committing a crime. This doesn't scare anything. When we are talking about realities that are not that much valued, and going especially to media rights, and why is piracy a crime? It's expensive. I'm paying for the service. I'm paying for the additional channels for cinema. There is a discussion that the sector needs to do, which is a commercial discussion. If piracy doesn't work, that doesn't come from the model of commercializing the product and the discussion of the product versus the assets that you have there. And television is stuck with a business that happened already, exclusive, specific contents in channels, in a model that is a model of managing cable television in Portugal. Of course, that there were we would have advantages if we were talking about selling the media rights as a whole. Why? Because we would have the means, namely regulations, to get more involvement of the clubs to do communication campaigns, awareness. But I must say, and this is a criticism, what I'm going to say, I don't recall ever having an effort of communication so that we all join together and associate the image of our managers and athletes to that message. It's similar to the central cell of television rights. Sometimes we see some discourses that are recorded saying that we don't distribute abroad. Well, we don't have any responsibilities there. If someone says, we want your help to go to a meeting abroad and show that there is an involvement of the clubs and the league in selling the product, I think that the clubs would be available. So the process of piracy within that perspective is the same from my standpoint. And it's not only a matter of law, because we have laws for everything in football, but the means are more the problem. It's no good to have a law against violence that requires a group of means in the stadiums to identify people, and then you don't have the police bodies to monitor that person. You need the security hired by the clubs to go and take care of it. So we could discuss thousands of examples on this matter. Still, in our case, I think that we have an advantage, and we will win with the centralization of rights. And one of them is to link other additional contents to the need of the purchase of those rights. A good tool to ensure fighting piracy would be to get statistics, other plans of the match, other repetitions, other goals that would be accessible through a platform that could be a phone, when together with the right that I've purchased. We are following a different positive path that to convince people that can have a better service if they don't go the easy way. But still, we need to do a structural effort from our part and from those who think they have the interest of broadcasting. And this would be even a bigger interest because they will be purchasing a content that will generate a certain income, and people will do it, will spread it the best as possible to get the return. Thank you very much. I think we could get more time to this. We would need more time to discuss all of this, but let's close the panel. We brought about some topics that are not the only ones that need to be discussed, but still, I would like to thank you for your contribution and wish you can all enjoy the last day of the Thinking Football Summit. Thank you very much and good afternoon.
almost got me.